Welcome to this webinar on Nature as Medicine. I'm Dr. Arunie Malwatta, a board member of Sri Lankan Society of Lifestyle Medicine, a lifestyle medicine physician, currently working as in the capacity of consultant nutrition physician in the Infectious Disease Institute, National Institute of Infectious Diseases of Sri Lanka. So for SLSLM, I'll be your moderator today. So we are excited and very lucky to have Dr. Melissa Sundermann, who is the leading figure in ACLM when it comes to the nature as medicine. Why I said so? Because Melissa is a double board certified physician in internal medicine and lifestyle medicine, who is with over 25 years of medical experience. She has training in integrative medicine from the University of Michigan and mind-body medicine through the Center for Mind-Body Medicine in Washington, D.C. Known as a Doctor Outdoors, Dr. Sundermann is the founding chair of the Nature as Medicine Subcommittee for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and chair for the Global Wellness Institute of Lifestyle Medicine Initiative. She is passionate about partnering with patients to guide them toward the healing through self-care and core principles of lifestyle medicine. She is a person who walks her talk. You can see her on top of the mountains, down the streams, everywhere where you find nature. She just brought up a beautiful slogan that the nature is never bad at you. There's no bad weather as such. It is inappropriate clothing. When you have a freezing snow, she will be still running for the physical fitness. Whenever the weather is different, it just what you need is the appropriate clothing and the good mindset, what you really get through lifestyle medicine. Bottom line is making us happy. Being everyone is happy. So the happiness comes through medicine and happiness comes through nature. So there's no doubt. So she's the best person to give us this dose of nature as medicine. Over to you, Melissa. Before that, few housekeeping notices for you. Over the next 30 to 45 minutes, Dr. Sundermann will be talking about the nature as medicine, which is a different topic, but still very valid. As Sri Lankans, we are lucky because we are 365 days, we can be on outdoors. So maybe we can get down Melissa for our future constructions and we can work together because we are 365 days summer. So after her talk, we'll be taking out questions for the next 15 minutes. Please post your questions in the chat box. So we will take up them at the end of the talk. Please kindly ensure your mics are muted at your end. And lastly, if you have time, please don't forget to give us a feedback and fill out our questionnaire where we want to serve you and give back the best of the best. We are improving. Thank you so much. Over to you, Melissa. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I'm so honored to be speaking and sharing my passion. I'm going to start sharing my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, so as Arunie said, I am Melissa Sundermann, also known as the Dr. Outdoors, and I'll be speaking today and sharing bit about nature's medicine. And I don't know our audience, but I know we're all interested in lifestyle medicine. And what I really want you to take home is it sounds like you live in a beautiful area where you have lots of nature and opportunity to get outdoors. So individually, we know as clinicians, if we are actually practicing what we preach, we're more apt to recommend this to our patients. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, this will encourage you personally to spend more time outdoors and also encourage you to prescribe nature to your patients. So the title of my talk is Nature is Nurture, the Therapeutic Power of the Great Outdoors. I don't have anything to disclose. And our learning objectives today is we're going to demonstrate the potential benefits of nature exposure. We're going to share evidence supporting the role of nature and health and provide tools to help engage patients and individuals to achieve more time spent outdoors. So you are all part of the Sri Lankan Society for Lifestyle Medicine. So you are aware of our 6 official pillars of lifestyle medicine, including food as medicine with a plant predominant dietary pattern, sleep, restorative sleep every night, physical activity and movement, avoidance of risky substances and risky behaviors, stress management, and positive social connection. I speak about an unofficial 7th pillar of lifestyle medicine. And as Arunie knows, I'm working very hard to make this an official 7th pillar one day. And that is daily exposure to nature and fresh air. We've all are familiar with Hippocrates, the father of medicine. And Hippocrates was also a doctor outdoors with his quote, "The physician treats, but nature heals." In the United States, this was a study that was done few years ago by the EPA, and they found that the average American spends about 93% of their days indoors. About 87% of that time is spent inside buildings, so our homes, our workplaces, schools, stores, and about 6% of time is spent inside automobiles or public transportation. So that implies only 7% of the time is spent outdoors, and my job and my role and passion is to get people to spend more time outdoors. So therefore, this is one of my favorite prescriptions. That's green spaces. And I'm also a big fan of this prescription, blue spaces. So why is this Dr. Outdoors' favorite prescription? Well, first of all, cost. Those of us in clinical practice are well aware of the financial burden of pharmaceuticals, even with insurances, and we have in the States co-payments that can bring down the price of pharmaceuticals. But sometimes these are just exorbitantly expensive, and I would have times in my patients that they were non-compliant, and it wasn't that they didn't want to take the medications.
I have to go upstairs and fold clothes.
Can everyone make sure that they're muted, please? Just make sure that you're muted. Thank you. Is that they're not taking their medications because they couldn't afford it. Well, the cost of nature, particularly it sounds like in Sri Lanka, is that, you know, a lot of times we can go out our back door or go to a local park or go to a schoolyard. So nature oftentimes is very affordable and free. There might be a price to get into a national park, but a lot of times getting outdoors is free. Also, side effects. When we prescribe medications and you see ads on TV or you see an ad in a magazine, we talk about side effects. And when you open up a medication, you would take out that pamphlet and in font, about 2-point font that you can't even read, are all the adverse side effects. When we talk about nature, about 99% of the side effects are going to be positive side effects. Of course, you do have to be aware of things like poison ivy or tick bites or bee stings. However, we know that getting outdoors, the majority of side effects are going to be positive side effects. And a third reason why this is my favorite prescription is duration. The half-life of many pharmaceutical medications is very short, meaning that we need to take this medication every day, maybe even twice a day, 3 times a day, or 4 times a day. Very few medications have a long half-life. Very few medications are taken just once a week or once a month. Maybe there's injectables that are given a couple times a year, but the majority of medications, pharmaceuticals, have a very short half-life. And we'll share some studies that show that going outdoors today can last a half-life of 30 days. So a very long half-life. So a couple of reasons why nature is my favorite prescription. So I'm going to bring you back to the origins of nature as medicine and either introduce or maybe remind you of Shinrin-yoku. And Shinrin-yoku is a Japanese practice that promotes visiting the forest for relaxation and to improve one's health. And it translates into English, forest bathing. So what is forest bathing or Shinrin-yoku? So Shinrin in Japanese means forest and yoku means birth. So Shinrin-yoku means bathing in the forest atmosphere and is taking in the forest through all 5 of our senses. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be hiking up a mountain or trail running or mountain biking. It's just being in nature. And as you see, I love this photo of this person who is just lying on this big tree stump and just taking in nature through all 5 senses. So the background of Shinrin-yoku, in 1982, the National Health Program in Japan was proposed for forest bathing by the Forest Agency of Japan. And the main idea and goal was to reduce stress in workers. So they're talking about workplace wellness. Nowadays, we have chief well-being officers, chief wellness officers in our companies, because we understand that in order for our workforce to be productive, we need to make sure that they're happy and healthy and that their stress is reduced. So Japan was doing this back in the early 80s. And so in 2004, the Forest Agency of Japan organized a project team to investigate Shinrin-yoku on human health. And it started off as a $1.5 million initial project. And one of the key members was Dr. King Lee. And Dr. King Lee is one of the most prolific researchers in green spaces and Shinrin-yoku, and this is his book. He's still out there publishing. And the research work of Dr. King Lee he was particularly interested in the relationship between Shinrin-yoku and immune function. And it was already well known that the immune system, including natural killer cells, plays a vital role in the defense against bacteria, viruses, and tumors, aka cancers. And they had already known that stress can inhibit immune function. And I totally can understand this, and I'm sure many of you can. Think about the times when you're in medical school or in residency and you've, been on call, nights in a row, and you finally get the weekend off and you get sick because you have just been working yourself so stressed or getting through final exams. So we know that stress inhibits immune function. So the question that Dr. King Lee proposes, could forest environments, Shinrin-yoku, reduce stress? And therefore, he speculated that forest environments, Shinrin-yoku, may have a beneficial effect on immune system by reducing stress. So this is just looking at natural killer cell activity and incident rates of cancer, and that people with lower natural killer cell activity tended to have higher incident rates of cancer, and people with higher natural killer cell activity tended to have lower incident rates of cancer, and that's both true in males and females. So Dr. King Lee was the principal investigator of the first forest bathing study in the world, which was in Japan, and this was done in 2005, and then his work was published in the International Journal of Immunopathology and Pharmacology in 2007. And what they did was they took subjects into the forest for 2 days, and they measured their natural killer cell activity. And what they found was baseline is going to be in blue. That's the natural killer cell activity. And what they found was going into the forest on day 1 and day 2, they had an increase in natural killer cell activity. So they thought, well, it's pretty impressive, but maybe it's just that they're leaving their home environment and, they're getting away from, everyday stress of doing chores, helping their kids with homework. Can everyone please make sure they're muted? Thank you. And so they decided, well, instead of going to a forest environment, why don't we take these same subjects and bring them to an urban environment, a big city environment? And they did the same thing. They measured natural killer cell activity. So they're in a big city with lots of concrete, lots of loud noises. And this time, when they measured that natural killer cell activity, they did not see that increase. There's something must be going on in this environment that is the green spaces. So this is where I talk about that long half-life, that long duration. So how long does the effect of going out in nature today impact your natural killer cell activity and your immune system and inflammation? So we can see in both males and females that blue is going to be your baseline. Then they went into forest for day 1, day 2. So we saw that bump in natural killer cell activity. But what is really remarkable is that when they came back home. So now they're not in the forest anymore. Still at day 7 and at day 30, we still saw an elevation from baseline of natural killer cell activity. So long half-life, long duration. Going outside today is going to boost your immune system for the next month to come. So Dr. King Lee and his team thought, well, we're onto something here. Let's expand this. So this was a study that came out afterwards, and this was a larger study, and this was a field experiment across 24 forests in Japan. And each experiment had 12 subjects, so they had 280 subjects total, and it was a crossover. So on the first day, 6 subjects went into the forest environment and 6 subjects went into an urban environment. They sat for 15 minutes and then they gently walked for 15 minutes. And the second day, crossover. Urban went to nature, nature went to urban. And instead of measuring natural killer cell activity, this time they measured salivary cortisol level, we know involved in stress, blood pressure, and pulse rate. And what did they find? Well, changes in salivary cortisol. The black is going to be the green spaces, the forest area. And the white is going to be city area. So both viewing and walking, we saw a decrease in salivary cortisol. These individuals are feeling less stressed. Also in pulse rate, a similar trend. Both viewing and walking, a lower pulse rate, engaging that parasympathetic activity in the forest environments. And blood pressure, again, both the top are going to be your systolic blood pressure, the bottom are going to be diastolic, and being in that forest environment, both viewing and walking, we saw lower blood pressure readings. So the question is, how long do you need to be out in the forest? As Dr. Outdoors, I would love to spend all my time out in green spaces. However, there are things like home life and work life. So what is that nature dose? We have doses for medications. What is the nature dose? And this is a study that came out of the University of Michigan. That's where I live. And looking at diurnal cortisol levels. And we know that cortisol levels fluctuate throughout the course of the day. So they wanted to see where is the largest percent drop in cortisol beyond that diurnal effect. And they looked at quartiles. So on the left, you can see the quartiles. Where is that nature dose? 7 to 14 minutes, 15 to 20, 21 to 30, or greater than 30 minutes. And what we see was that largest percent cortisol drop seemed to be around that 20-minute interval. And I followed the research and literature coming out about nature dose very carefully. And really what I think most people agree upon is that daily nature dose is 20 minutes per day. That doesn't have to be all together. For people who have really, really busy lives, you could do 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening, however you want to break it up, but aiming, and that's what I prescribe to my patients, is 20 minutes per day. And this is another study that goes along with that. This was a large study, almost 20,000 participants, and they were surveyed over 7 days. And what they found was, compared to no nature contact in the past 7 days, the likelihood of reporting good health or high well-being became significantly higher with contact in nature greater than or equal to 120 minutes per week. So if you break that down, that's 20 minutes per day or 120 minutes per week. And then the positive associations seem to peak at that 200 to 300 minutes per week. So it's not like you have to live in the forest, but if you can try to get out at least 120 minutes per week, or, it's 2 hours. And what they found was, even people, we talk about weekend warriors, they are super, super busy during the week with work and home life. If you can get that 120 minutes on the weekend, that also will elevate your well-being. And this is a study that was actually looking at brain function, looking at the amygdala. And then we know that the amygdala is very important for our stress response. So when we have a perceived threat, our amygdala goes into high fire. It puts us into that fight or flight. It puts us into the sympathetic drive. And that's great. However, we don't want the amygdala firing all the time. It is good for us to get into a relaxation state, a parasympathetic state. And so this was a study looking at amygdala activity, and it compared amygdala activity with a 1-hour walk in nature versus a 1-hour walk in an urban environment. And what they found was, taking a walk in nature for an hour, we actually saw deactivation of the amygdala. So better able to get into that parasympathetic and relaxation state. What I'm giving these talks and I'm talking to patients and trying to educate about nature's medicine, people will say, well, that's great, Dr. Outdoors. That's great that you live in a place where you can get outdoors. But a lot of people, that's really not possible. Maybe they live in a big city environment that there's not nature outside their door, or the air quality is bad, or they don't feel safe, or they have a disability that they just can't, go outdoors. What about virtual nature? So this is a study that looks at audio clips, so sound bites. And it was about 300 participants, and they listened to 6-minute sound bites of nature's of sounds. So they either listen to 6 minutes of birdsong or 6 minutes of loud, boisterous traffic sounds. So horns and sirens and cars and automobiles. And what they found was listening to birdsong actually improved feelings of anxiety. And listening to birdsong optimized and improved feelings of paranoia. And traffic sounds seemed to worsen feelings of depression. So I say to my patients, if you live in a place where you have birds surrounding you, open your windows. If you don't, then put on some YouTube or find some downloadable on your computer that you or your iPod that you can listen to some beautiful nature sounds. And then what about viewing nature? Can we just maybe look at nature, and could that help? And this is a study that was done a while ago, actually, 1984, but I just absolutely love this study. So this was looking at inpatients, so in the hospital, and post-cholecystectomy patients. And each patient had their own room, and they all had windows. However, half of the patients were looking at a beautiful courtyard or some trees or some flowers, and the other half we're looking at a not so beautiful brick wall. So 23 patients in each arm. And what they found were the patients with a view of nature had shorter hospital stays, had fewer negative evaluations on the nurse's notes, and required less pain medication. So this is really interesting about biophilic design in our healthcare, in our schools, at our homes, that really having a biophilic design, having views of nature could improve a whole gamut of outcomes. So why do people love forests? I agree with all of these. There's this quiet atmosphere, beautiful scenery. It feels protected. I live in the woods. And so when I walk outside my house, I say, oh my gosh, it's not even windy out. And then I drive away and I'm like, my goodness, it's very windy, but I feel so safe and protected in the woods. And then there's this clean, fresh air in the forest and a special good smell. And so one of the wonderful things about being in nature is the ability to use all 5 of our senses and to really be present. So we can use our sense of sight, what are we seeing, our sense of smell, and we're going to talk about what phytoncides are, our sense of hearing, our sense of touch, and our sense of taste, of course, only tasting something that is safe. And this is a mindfulness technique that I love to share with patients. And mindfulness, I've done training in mind-body medicine. And when I talk to people about mindfulness, some people are totally in with that, right? They've been lifelong meditators. They practice deep breathing. But for other people, it can be intimidating. They think, oh my goodness, I can't just sit there and think about nothing. And so we talk about what mindfulness is. And that really is just being in the present moment. And a great way to do that is this technique called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's using all 5 of your senses in nature to practice mindfulness. And I share this with my patients. I say, you can do this with kids. I mean, toddlers can do this. So going outdoors and first of all, just focusing on 5 things you can see, like really looking around, maybe looking up the cloud, seeing what kind of cloud formations you see. Are you noticing things in bloom? What kind of animals are you seeing? And then shift to 4 things you can feel, actually feel things. So pick up a leaf and maybe feel the ridges, or bend down and touch the moss on the rock, or pick up snow where I don't think you guys have snow, but we have snow here. And then shift to 3 things you can hear. Focus on different kind of bird song. Are you hearing the wind blow and rustle the leaves? And then 2 things you can smell. And then maybe 1 thing you can taste. So again, this is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, practicing grounding technique, mindfulness in nature, utilizing all five senses. So I mentioned sense of smell. So I want to introduce the term phytoncide. Phyton means plant, and we talk about phytonutrients all the time in lifestyle medicine, right? Our plants that give us so much nurture. And then side means sterilizing power. So phytoncides. Phytoncides are produced by anything green that is living. So our trees, our plants, our shrubs, and they are organic volatile compounds that are emitted by these green living specimens. And they produce these to protect themselves, right? Because phytoncides, they have anticidal properties. Well, the amazing thing is anytime we are around green spaces, around these trees, these shrubs, these plants, we as humans actually inhale these phytoncides and they can optimize our own immune system as opposed to being in urban environments around factories or where there's air pollutants. And we know that that is not good for our respiratory system and can trigger asthma and other respiratory conditions. So what are the effects of phytoncides? Well, they can help out with stress relief by suppressing cortisol. It can help restore our energy. It can actually improve learning ability and concentration and has strong microbial properties. So we're going to come back to Dr. King Lee. He was the original investigator for Shinrin-yoku. And this was a very small study. However, it's pretty amazing. So Dr. Lee wanted to investigate the effect of phytoncides even further. So the study had 12 subjects, and each subject had their own hotel room for 3 nights. Half of the rooms were rigged with a humidifier to vaporize stem oil from hinoki cypress trees, i.e. phytoncides. And the other 6 rooms emitted O to nothing. So after 3 nights of sleeping in either phytoncides being emitted or nothing, they came out and they measured the natural killer cell activity on all of these subjects. And what they found were the individuals who are inhaling those phytoncides experienced a 20% increase in natural killer cells during their stay, and also said they felt less fatigued, whereas the control group saw no changes in their natural killer cell activity. So I've been talking about green spaces and forest bathing. What about blue spaces? People are like, Dr. Outdoors, I love getting near water. I just feel so calm. So when we talk about blue spaces, we talk about rivers and oceans and lakes and ponds and streams and fountains and waterfalls. So what about blue spaces for wellness? And I will say that when we look at the research, there tends to be not as many studies about blue spaces. However, that does not mean that they are any less effective or important. So here's a study looking at adult well-being. And what they found was that there is a link between childhood exposure to blue spaces and adult well-being. And this was across 18 different countries. And what they found was children who were exposed to blue spaces, there was an association with improved and better adult well-being. And I think this association was mediated by intrinsic motivations and recent nature visits. So the take-home point is if you have young family, if you have young friends, nieces and nephews, grandchildren, bring them to blue spaces because that could translate into improved well-being in their adulthood. The next term I want to talk about is biophilia. And this is a term that originated in 1973 by Eric Fromm, who is a social psychologist. However, most of us know about biophilia through the prolific writing and work of E.O. Wilson. And biophilia is described as the passionate love of life and all that is alive. It is a wish to further growth, whether in a person, plant, an idea, or social group. And it's basically the innate emotional connection of human beings to all other living organisms. And I feel that as kids, we know this, right? I grew up a long time ago in the 1970s, and it's before screens came out, right? We did have TV, but we didn't record things or anything like that. And so as kids, we got outside and we dug in dirt and we looked for worms. We picked up caterpillars, we caught fireflies, and I built tree forts because we just knew that we are connected to all other living creatures. We as humans are nature. And I feel like as we get older and we have other responsibilities, it takes us, and now we have modern technology that takes us away from this concept. So bringing this back, that we are all truly connected in nature. Another term and another theory about how nature is beneficial came out actually from the University of Michigan. And this is from Rachel and Stephen Kaplan, who really did some of the very original work on how nature is beneficial to our minds. And it's called the attention restoration theory. And it proposes that individuals benefit from the chance to be away from everyday stress and to experience expansive spaces and contexts, and engage in activities that are compatible with our intrinsic motivations. And we've experienced these softly fascinating experiences. And so this combination of factors encourages involuntary or indirect attention, and therefore enables our voluntary or directed attention and capacities to recover and restore. I love talking about the gut microbiome. We do this all the time in lifestyle medicine. We know that food is medicine, is so nurturing, and the fiber in our plants that we consume optimize our gut microbiome. But what about nature? Is spending time in nature, could that help optimize our gut microbiome? And we know with the gut microbiome, that's where 70% of our immune system resides. It's where 90% of our serotonin is produced. So very, very important to the health and well-being of all individuals. So this is a study called the Play and Grow Randomized Controlled Study. This is looking at little kids. It was 54 preschool age children. And it was a 10-week nature-related structure that was the Play and Grow program. Basically, these kids were told to get outdoors, get dirty, play in dirt, just have fun. So after 10 weeks, all these kids had a more significant connection to nature. That makes sense. They also had decreased perceived overall stress and anger. And they did take fecal samples from all these kids, and they found alterations in their gut microbiome. There was an increase in roseburia, and roseburia is a bacteria that produces butyrate. Butyrate is one of those short-chain fatty acids we think of as messengers going all over the body to optimize the health and well-being. Butyrate, acetate, propionate are the short-chain fatty acids that are produced when we are nurturing our gut microbiome. They also saw an increase in fecal serotonin level, again, to suggest that the gut microbiome is being optimized because 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut microbiome. Looking at chronic disease and green space exposure. So this was a study looking at green space and type 2 diabetes. And what they found was, those are the resources that the study looked at green space, and it seemed that green space was inversely related to type 2 diabetes. And another study looked at neighborhoods with green space, and neighborhoods with more tree canopy and open green space reduced fatal and non-fatal cardiovascular events in people with type 2 diabetes. What about neurodegenerative diseases? So this was a large study looking at 22 Medicare beneficiaries. And what they found was that adults who lived with a zip code with more green space had lower rate of hospitalizations for Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and related dementias, such as vascular dementia and Lewy body. And then when they looked at blue spaces, they found that zip codes in closer proximity to blue spaces had fewer associations and admissions for Parkinson's. However, they did not see that same association with Alzheimer's. So again, being near green spaces and blue spaces could actually have an effect on neurodegenerative diseases. What about stroke? Finding a similar thing, that looking at green spaces, this study was determined through the NDVI, which is the Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. So basically looking at how much green space tree canopy was around in proximity. And what they found were that being near that green space and the stroke risk were inversely correlated with a 19% lower odds of stroke for patients living with the highest green space. And again, when we get into the studies about this with green spaces and air quality, we know that there is a relationship between air quality and stroke. So green spaces, again, could be good for stroke prevention. And what about telomeres? So we know that telomeres on the end of our chromosomes, as we age, they get shorter. There are many studies that have been done about telomere length. Dr. Dean Ornish has a famous study that he did looking at lifestyle behaviors and how optimizing lifestyle behaviors and the pillars of lifestyle medicine could elongate telomeres. And this study that I have cited here looks at green space exposure. And then what they found was that greater neighborhood green space could be associated with longer telomere length. So perhaps nature is the next anti-aging medication. So what I really love to do is to, hit multiple pillars at one time and talking about movement in nature. And when we move our bodies in nature, it can help lower blood pressure and stress hormone. It can reduce our nervous system arousal with the amygdala, can enhance our immune system function with our natural killer cell activity, increase our self-esteem. We saw that with blue spaces, and reduce anxiety. We even saw that with the bird song. So many forms of nature. When I'm prescribing exercise to my patients, I like to use the term movement rather than exercise. People think about exercise and they think they have to go to a gym. They think it has to be boring. It has to be hard. If we reframe that as movement and finding a way to move our body, moving our bodies should feel joyful, especially if we can find something that we love to do. And I say, especially if you can find ways to move your body outdoors. So whether that's walking or jogging, spending time in your garden, hiking, biking, swimming, skiing, bird watching, practicing yoga or Tai Chi outdoors, kayaking, canoeing, fishing, playing pickleball, playing basketball, any form of movement in nature is going to be beneficial. This is just, as Arunie said, I do my best to practice what I preach. I love to move my body outdoors. So just ways that I do that. I have 2 kids in their 20s. So we've raised them taking trips and going hiking and skiing. And I've surrounded myself with friends who like to do similar things and just try to remain active myself, because then I can be a good model for my patients and my family and my friends. The blue zones. So we know Dan Buettner's incredible work about the blue zones, how we have 5 original blue zones and now Singapore being the 6th. And what I wanted, there's 9 the power 9 of the blue zones. And we talk about eating plants and having a community. And one of their pillars is move naturally. So we know in the blue zones, we have these gyms called Planet Fitness on every corner here in the States, right? So it doesn't have to be that. Just moving our bodies naturally, moving our bodies outdoors can be very helpful. And we see that with the blue zones who, live long, prosperous lives. Gardening, wonderful way to be outdoors. And many benefits of gardening is that digging in that dirt, exposing ourselves to that soil can help boost our immune system. It's a stress reducer, right? So it's actually practicing mindfulness. I know when I'm out there and I am gardening and I'm weeding and I'm planting and I'm cultivating, it's actually a mindful practice because I'm so focused on the present moment. It's a good workout. When I mow my lawn, when I am out there weeding or spreading mulch, that is physical activity. And our gut microbiome, when we are in that soil and getting exposed to those microbes. And then anything we grow in our garden is going to be wonderful to eat. I often tell my patients, I want you to eat the rainbow. And that is not M&Ms and Skittles. That is fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains. We're very familiar with the, at least in this country, in the States, we have a food pyramid. Well, this is a wonderful nature pyramid. And at the bottom of the pyramid are going to be things I want you to try to do every single day. And that means get outdoors. Try to get outdoors, spend time throughout the course of the day with that nature dose of 20 minutes per day or more. And then weekly, think about working out in your garden, taking maybe a nature walk. And then monthly, try to support your local parks. A lot of times, at least here in the States, we have many local parks, but sometimes they close because we don't visit them often enough. And then yearly, if you are able to take time off and maybe take a trip with your family, it doesn't have to be far away. Think about incorporating nature into that. I know with our family, we really, when we're planning out a vacation, a family vacation, we really try to say, okay, can we go visit a national park? This Christmas, we're choosing to go skiing. So really trying to incorporate family time and nature together. I just want to highlight urban spaces. This, of course, is New York City, and this is Central Park. And I think the origins of Central Park are very interesting because it really emphasizes the therapeutic role of nature, even in urban environments. When Manhattan, the island of Manhattan, was getting developed in the 1850s for New York City, their plans were to build all of these buildings, right? And lots of people moving from farmland to this very concentrated area. And some urban planners thought to themselves, wow, this all this concrete and all these people all packed in, that might not be very good for our well-being. I think we should save some area to be a haven for city dwellers to be able to retreat. And that is where Central Park came about. And now this world famous park is just really just a haven for city dwellers to just be able to come be in forests. I know every time I visit New York City, I'll go for a walk or a jog in Central Park. And it's like you forget you're in a big city, right? You're surrounded by trees and the reservoir, green spaces and blue spaces. Here in this country, when we talk about nature prescribing, this is Park RX America. And just to give you an idea what we're doing in this country, this is Robert Czar who developed this. And it's a really cool platform where as a provider, I can sign up and then I can actually in my office prescribe nature to my patients, and I can add in the types of activities. I can go onto their data base and find a park near where my patient lives, and I can come up with frequency and duration, and then I can submit it, and they will get either text reminders or get email reminders. And again, I can choose my frequency and for how long I want that to last. So that's what one of the platforms that is being developed and utilized here in the United States. Across the pond, this is in Scotland, and this was a nature prescription trial in Edinburgh. And for this trial, 350 patients received nature prescriptions for 32 different health conditions, 69% for mental health, 17% for physical health conditions, and 3/4 of the patients reported benefiting from their nature prescription. And 87% said they were likely or very likely to continue their nature prescription. And we see this so often. We prescribe whether it's food is medicine, exercise is medicine, stress management, is that when we engage our patients into practicing these healthy lifestyle behaviors, they feel better. And when they feel better, they want to keep doing it. This is an app, and I don't know if it's available right now outside of the US, but it is a free app. And basically, once individuals download this Nature Dose app, that's available for both iPhones and Androids, it keeps track of how much time you spend outdoors. So for I don't have a problem. I definitely meet my 20 minutes per day, but a lot of people just, get so ingrained in being indoors, being attached to their computers on Zoom, that this is a great way to just keep you accountable about how much time you've spent outdoors during the week, and gives you lots of little tips about how to encouragement, how to get out there. This is a book written by a colleague of mine, Bart Foster, and it's Business Outside. And so he's doing amazing work of getting the C-suite, so the CEO, CIO, COO, all of these people who normally have these three-piece suits and meet in boardrooms. He's actually saying, take off your suit, put on your hiking boots, and we're going to go hiking. And what he's found is that getting these C-suite, all of these business people outdoors, they actually have more creative thought processes, they're got better engagement. So he's really trying to take the boardroom into the mountains. This is a social prescribing that's going on in the UK, and they set up nature prescription. So the GP will refer patient to this dose of nature. There's a psychological assessment, and then they are prescribed basically a 10-week nature prescription, and they're having very good outcomes. In Canada, this is Parks, which is launched in November 2020. Dr. Melissa Lam was very instrumental in getting this. This is Canada's first nature prescription. And when the GP writes a prescription in Canada, a nature prescription, this actually gives that patient free admission to over 80 parks across Canada, which is really, really cool. Here in the United States, we don't have free access right yet with nature prescriptions, but we do have something called a Parks Pass. And once an individual is 62 years or older, they can purchase this one-time pass for $80, and it gives them free admission for the rest of their life to any national park in the United States. This is a publication I'm very proud of that came out last year in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine journal, and it is about my Nature's Medicine, the 7th unofficial pillar of lifestyle medicine, written by myself and my Nature's Medicine subcommittee leadership, Susie Spell and Deborah Chieli. These are some great books, some wonderful resources that I own. I absolutely love them. Blue Mind, written by Wallace J. Nichols about blue spaces. And then we talk about green spaces, The Nature Fix by Florence William. And then Richard Louv, who is just a very prolific writer in the nature as medicine space with his books, Last Child in the Woods, The Nature Principle, and Vitamin N. If you love podcasts as much as I do, this is a wonderful podcast with Dr. Mark Campbell called the Nature of Wellness Podcast. I actually had the honor of being a guest on his podcast. So he's into his 2nd season now. Again, I love podcasts. I love to learn more, and they're free. So that's a great resource. And with 2 of my favorite quotes from Hippocrates, my other Dr. Outdoors: nature itself is the best physician. And another wonderful quote: if you're in a bad mood, go for a walk. If you're still in a bad mood, go for another walk. And I say, preferably outdoors. So that concludes my talk. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share my passion for Dr. Outdoors. If you want to learn more about the work I do, I am very active on LinkedIn, just Melissa Sundermann. I also have an Instagram handle. I actually have 2 to make it confusing. I am at the Dr. Outdoors on Instagram. I also am Motivator Melissa on Instagram. So feel free to follow me and follow along on my journey. And I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you so much, Melissa. I'm speechless. It was so, so wonderful. So we had great participation, over 40 plus. It was 40 plus, and we have many questions. So with the interest of time, I had to pick and select some questions. I'm sorry. So we have few questions. How do we cope with the heat and humidity and being outside? How healthy it is, and what are the health kind of, how adverse that is? Interested in knowing that.
Yeah, and that's a great question. It's you know, one of my quotes is, there's no bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. However, that's, for me, we're in winter here now, so I just bundle up. But in your case, you're the opposite, where you have heat and humidity. And I mean, that's heat stroke and is a real thing. So I think it's being aware of that. For myself, when it does get really hot and humid, that's where getting out in the morning can be really, really beneficial, or after the sunset. Again, that can be safety reasons, right? I have things like reflectors and headlamps, early morning sunlight. We're finding more and more how beneficial that is. So getting out before the sun is fully up, that's safer for our skin. But going out without sunglasses, maybe at, 7 to about 9 a.m. To see if you've got at least 10 or 15 minutes. What we found is that helps to align our circadian rhythm. It helps to align the melatonin secretion, helps to elevate serotonin secretion, and help regulate cortisol. So when people are like, well, I don't know when I should go outside, I barely have any time, I say anytime that you can fit in is great. If you can get out in that early morning, and you don't have to be necessarily exercising. So if it's too hot or too humid to just be outside, maybe having a cup of tea, maybe journaling, something like that, of just getting outdoors. That's when if there is issues with air quality, like in the States, we've been having issues with some of the forest fires in Canada that actually impact our air quality in the United States. So the air quality will be too dangerous for people to really be outside or trying to exercise outside. So that's where that virtual nature can be really beneficial, of listening to nature sounds, looking at virtual reality. And we're starting to get more and more studies of virtual reality in nature, particularly like in nursing home segments, right? Where people can't necessarily get outdoors, or hospitalized patients, or people with disabilities. So it's best to get outdoors. If it's dangerous, please don't do that. And do the virtual reality, or trying to avoid when the sun is at its highest peak.
Yes, thank you. So that means there are some adverse effects, but there are antibiotic effects, anti-aging effects, immunity boosting effects, has to be always weigh with risks and benefits. So you have a lot of benefits when you're outside. So another question here, someone is interested in knowing, does the walking in the concrete walking paths lined by trees, that means it is not completely natural, uh, do they have the similar effect for this?
Yes, so that's a wonderful question. And really, there's some trials going on right now in urban environments where they're looking at just tree-lined streets and tree canopy. And just that exposure can be for reducing heat. So when we talk about big cities and how hot it can get, having tree canopies makes the heat index come down. And again, tree-lined streets, you're inhaling those phytoncides. There is a really cool a study that came out of Finland looking at tree canopy. And what they found were areas that had higher tree canopy, they actually saw a reduction in prescription requirements for asthma, blood pressure, and mental health. So just being around tree canopy, being exposed to that can be hugely beneficial. And so when urban planners are looking at big cities, I think there's more and more interest to develop those cities with a lot of tree canopy as much as possible. And like I said, it does bring down that heat index. So it actually, is safer for people who live in the city, because it helps to cool it.
Thank you. Sai wanted to know that she wanted to know how closely your discussion aligns with the concepts of ecotherapy. Are you familiar with ecotherapy? If so, could you kindly share the thoughts of its benefits and how it might be applied to promote mental and physical well-being through this ecotherapy?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the work that I do is very, very closely aligned. And in fact, our Nature's Medicine subcommittee for ACLM, we meet every month. You're very welcome to come to our meetings. We meet on the first Tuesday of every month. We meet in 2 days, and we bring in speakers from all over the world because it's via Zoom. And we've had several ecotherapists who bring their work in. So we've had people who work with veterans who have PTSD from fighting at war. We have people that work with anyone who, has struggled with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. So really looking at people who own nonprofits who do this kind of work, and it is very, very closely aligned to what I do. I bring in my work, I bring more of the science and the research and how from a physician lens, and then I closely work with therapists who do this on a practical level. And I was just in Texas a week and a half ago presenting at the Global Outdoor Health Summit, and a physician, Dr. Gia Merlot, who is a lifestyle psychiatrist, and I gave a talk. And then everyone else was really doing work in ecotherapy. So the work that we do is very much symbiotic and complements and supports each other's work.
Very good. Thank you. So, someone also wants to know, are there any seasonal effects of nature? I mean, with the different seasons, are there any positive or negative factors that we are getting? Seasonal
Yeah,
effects.
so yeah, I think that I am very fortunate that I live in a place where we have all four seasons. And there's going to be, we talk about just, some of the dangers of air quality or heat index, or in my case, in winter that, that you have the appropriate clothing so you don't get frostbite. So now that I'm in winter, our plants go dormant, right? So I'm probably not inhaling as much as those phytoncides. I went for a run this morning. It was I don't know what it is in Celsius, but Fahrenheit was about 15 degrees, so quite chilly. But yet this is where that gets to that attention restoration theory and that 5-4-3-2-1 of mindfulness. I went for a run. I was just looking at the snow that had fallen. I was looking at my footprints. I was looking at, the icicles on some of the trees. So it's a different, each season brings something different. And I guess, it might not be the phytoncides, but it is that soft fascination that always has an effect. And I think that nature, when we really get philosophical about the change of seasons and we go into winter and all the leaves fall down, and then we come into spring and renewal and bloom and flourishing, that we all go through our different seasons of life. And there's always, even in times that we feel that we've lost our own leaves, we know that is eternal growth and light within us all. So I think those parallels, and I know with Ayurveda is very much connected with seasons and the times of year. So there's benefits to all seasons.
Yeah. There's another question on trials. Are there any trials done on cancer patients with the nature therapy?
I don't know anything offhand that looked at that specific population. No, I don't know of any offhand. I am going to look that up though. Thank you for that. I mean, I would think and I would hope that just boosting that natural killer cell activity and inflammation, and also, I've seen it with my own patients of mindset too, of getting through a cancer diagnosis, of how we approach that and resiliency. And we know that spending time in nature, especially kids, right? Kids, just what they learn in resiliency through spending time in nature, that I would hope that there would be an additive effect in this. But whoever asked that question, I'm gonna look into that, and I'll maybe find something and update my slide deck. So I appreciate that question.
Yeah, some questions are more closer to our hearts when we live with
Yes,
problems.
yes,
It makes us share our experiences and grow mutually. So it's important. Thank you so
yes.
much. So we have to respect your time and everyone's time. So it is so helpful, and this kind of evidence-based lecture is so important for a country like us, because we have nature everywhere. Wherever you go,
Mhm.
in 3 hours time you can reach whatever the weather you want. Cool climate in Aurelia, dry climate in Jaffna, Kataragama, and everywhere. So it's a matter of 3 hours drive. So we are very lucky. We are a small island with so many diversity, so much of diversity. So it's very helpful when you see through this evidence-based lens. So it really makes us compelled to practice and be participated in this nature as medicine, as a prescription. So thank you so much, Melissa. So